All right, welcome, Erica. I'm so excited to have you from sunny Hawaii. I'm very jealous right now as winter sets in Maryland. If you would like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about why you joined the military, what branch you did, and what you're doing now, and then we'll dive in.
Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm pretty excited. As she said, I'm Erica Lehmkuhl. I live on Oahu Island in Hawaii. It's the whole island is Honolulu County. Sometimes people don't really know which island it is, but it's the one with Waikiki, most of the military bases, and most of the population. So they actually call it the gathering place. That's our nickname of our island. I am originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I left for the Army when I was 17 years old and was in the military for 23 years. I joined the Army because I jokingly tell people I joined the Army so I could shoot back at people that were shooting at me. If you've ever been to Louisville, that joke is probably very funny to you, or if you grew up there, you understand what I'm talking about. But I actually joined the Army because I was rebelling against my parents. I needed discipline, and I thought that, I'm just going to join the Army and just be my own adult and do whatever not do whatever I want to do. But yeah, it was basically to get away from Louisville. They say that you join the military because you're running to something or running from something, and I was definitely running from something. I really didn't feel like I had much future there.
That's awesome. And what job did you enlisted in the Army, correct? So what job did you get there?
Yes. Yeah, so that's actually a funny story as well. So I graduated high school June 8th of 1994. Yeah, I'm that old.
Yeah.
And then June 28th, I was mad at my parents. They had taken away my car because one of my friends opened the door into somebody else's car and I was backing up. I didn't know it. The door slammed on her arm. She went to the hospital. It was like $600 in medical bills that we couldn't afford. So my parents took away my car. I was very mad about that. So I was like, I'm going to show you. I'm going to find a way out. Well, I had taken the ASVAB and I got, back then, a 120 was like one of the highest GTs you could get. So anything over 110, you could do anything you wanted. So I went to the Army recruiter and I was like, okay, I want to enlist. I want to get out of here. And they said, that's fine. What job do you want? And I said, well, I want to be a tank mechanic. I don't know why this was in my head, but this is what I wanted to do. And they were like, oh, you're too smart to be a tank mechanic. And I said, well, I'm also smart enough to know that you have to let me do what I want to do or I don't have to join. And they were like, okay, fine. You'll leave in October for basic. I was like, no, this is June. I want to leave now. And so I went to lunch at MEPS, came back, and they said, well, if you want to leave in August, that's the next basic training that's leaving. You can be a cook or communications. I said, well, I am not cooking anybody's food. Not to diss on the cooks, but that was not my jam. So I became communications, and I was a radio multi-channel systems operator maintainer, which is basically like radio line of sight stuff. And that's what my original MOS was. It changed and morphed throughout the years as computers became more popular, but that's what I did.
Oh, that's very cool. I think that was my brother's MOS. I have two brothers that joined the Army. One was a combat medic, and then the other, I believe that was his MOS. He told us Signal Corps, and we stuck with that because we couldn't remember his
Yeah.
full MOS title because it was really long, and I was in high school when he joined. But that's pretty cool. Small world. Because my last interview was Army Signal Corps as well.
Oh, what was their name?
Renee
If you can say,
Ventries.
okay. Okay. Don't know them, but Signal is a very small world.
She got out of the Navy. I'm sorry. No, maybe that wasn't her. It must have been two recordings ago. I have all my notes on here.
Yeah.
I don't
No
remember who
pressure.
it was. They all ran together, but okay, and then you said that did you commission as an officer during your time in the Army?
No, I was a troublemaker. I stayed enlisted.
Okay.
No, I thought about it. Yeah, I thought about it because the pay is so much better and it seemed like not less work, but just a different type of work. I mean, manual labor was
Yeah.
what the being enlisted was about for the most part. And Signal Corps is heavy lifting. I mean, this is I'm not all show, no go. So it won't go away. I joined the Army and got tough and now I just have muscles all the time. But I mean, it's good. People are like,
It's
oh,
a good problem to have.
somebody asked me at a swimming pool. Yeah, somebody asked me at a swimming pool if I was an off-season bodybuilder. I was like, no, but thank you so much.
That is
So
the best compliment
yeah,
you could ever get.
I know. I was like, holy cow. And I do try to watch what I eat and not, and work out and stuff, but by no means do I apply that kind of time and effort. So that was really nice. But I forgot what the question was.
Yeah.
Oh, officer
I just
commission.
asked
Okay,
if you were
yeah,
an
I do
officer,
that
yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, I go off in
It's
rabbit
okay.
holes
I'll keep you
sometimes.
on track.
No, so thank you. I did think about going officer about 10-year mark. This is right when Iraq was kicking off. I was at Fort Bragg. Um, and it wasn't, had nothing to do with Iraq, but that was just something I was thinking about doing. I think it was on my first deployment, actually. My first Iraq deployment was in 2005. And during that deployment, I was thinking about going flight warrant. I was thinking about a lot of things, but I really experienced leadership in the front, if you will, being downrange. And I was really good at what I did. And I loved organization. And I was very physically strong and very mentally strong. And so for me, leading the soldiers was like so important. And being down there with them on their level and leading from the front. I'm Audie Murphy, so I love me some Audie Murphy stuff, but lead from the front is the Audie Murphy motto. And so my motto
Mhm.
was, lead from the front, and so I was always follow me, let's go, let's do this together. And I loved being enlisted so much. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't give it up.
Yeah.
So
No, I understand, and it sounds like you were the perfect like person to be in that senior enlisted leadership too. That's awesome.
I hope so. I tried.
So you were active duty during 9/11. Do you remember that day, or do you want to talk about what that day was like for you?
Oh yeah, I remember it vividly. I was at Fort Bragg. So, center of the universe, I was a paratrooper, all that great stuff. That morning, I was actually on the way to the airport to pick up my then boyfriend. We aren't together anymore, obviously. It's long time ago, excuse me. But yeah, I was on the way to the airport and I was listening to the radio and I was like, is this a joke? Is this some kind of War of the Worlds type thing? Because it was so
Mhm.
surreal. But then all of a sudden, everybody from the unit started calling. And so at Fort Bragg, most people, that's in Fayetteville, North Carolina, most people have to fly to Raleigh because it's just cheaper. So I was on the way to Raleigh, an hour away, to pick up my boyfriend at the time. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm picturing the worst stuff. I'm like, they're going to meet me at the thing and say his was one of the planes that crashed. Because he was coming from Alaska, and I was
Mhm.
really super scared. But I got there and I picked him up. He was one of the last flights on 9/11, which was crazy. Um, and then the base was locked down, and we knew if you're at Fort Bragg, when some stuff kicks off that you better get ready. And we had
Yeah.
trained for it. It wasn't my first combat deployment. I joined the Army at 17, 18, moved to Germany. And when I turned 2 months after my 19th birthday, I was on deployment to Bosnia with peace implementation forces. So it's definitely, anybody who was in Bosnia can tell you it was definitely not a picnic. And in some ways, I actually think it was worse than Iraq, my personal experience.
Mhm.
But I'm also support, so I'm not out there kicking down doors or anything. But yeah, so
Yeah.
that was what 9/11 meant to me. Is here we go, get ready.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. I couldn't imagine being just active duty when that happened. And I know I've always tried to ask people when I know that they served during that time because it's just really um interesting. I don't interesting just doesn't do like the situation justice, but I do really like learning about
Yeah,
what people's experiences were like. And I was Navy, so just hearing about people on the ship, and it's just crazy how the whole world just flipped a switch. And especially the country and the military, they had a lot to do in literal hours.
yeah.
Okay. Do you have any like challenges that you faced or specific experiences from being a woman, especially in the Army in the 90s and 2000s, like that? It was a different time then. So, what was your experience like as a female?
So I actually kind of miss the old Army. I know that might sound weird, but I mean, obviously, people shouldn't be getting sexually assaulted and raped and harassed. And so some of the movements that we've had with EO and Sharp and everything are phenomenal and very needed.
Hmm.
Resiliency training was very needed. But I liked the old Army. I loved it. I loved that, you could haze each other and tape each other upside down to a tree and just it was, you were part of the team. Like, I remember getting blood ranked, and if you didn't get blood ranked, it meant that the team chief thought you were a piece of crap. Like, the hazing was part of being a part of the team. And
Hmm.
so I do miss that. I think if you don't have a little bit of light hazing, and because you're going through things together, psychologically speaking, I love to read, if you didn't notice.
Yeah.
um, Going through things together, it forms bonds. And so that's why people from basic training and people in the Army have these tight bonds, because you can't formulate that outside of going through hard things together. And so we had tight teams
Hmm.
because I came in '94. There was not really any war. I mean, Desert Storm was very small and very contained. It was a war, don't get me wrong. My cousin went, and so he told me about it here and there, but it was different. It was very short, and not many people went. Then we had Somalia, which once again, very very small
Mhm.
amount of people that were involved in that. And then when Bosnia came, it was just very different. But
Yeah.
yeah, those bonds, they bring you together, and so I do miss that. I think that as a female though, when I first came in the army, I couldn't run very well. I could barely run a lap without walking because I played sports in high school, but I didn't know how to like run for distance. I could sprint, but then I would run and I'd just be exhausted. And I was like, how do these people keep running?
Mhm.
And I wasn't overweight or anything. I just couldn't run. And so finally, I went to Germany and they were like, you just don't stop when you're tired. You just run slower. I'm like, okay, because that was my first duty station. So I went from basic training running like 21 minutes. They turned off the clock. I was so slow type deal. I barely made it out of basic. I was such a slow runner. Then in Germany, I went in Bosnia and my run increased to about 16:45, which to me was like, hallelujah, this is great. Well, then fast forward to Hawaii, which was my second duty station. And at this time, I was 20 years old and had been in the Army for about 3.5 years, 3 years, 3 years, something like that. And it's very physically demanding here for the units. I was in 25th Infantry Division down in the Signal Battalion because that's how they didn't have brigade combat teams back then. So I was in the Signal Battalion that supported the division. And when you do division runs or you do anything, you are running. If it's okay to
Mhm.
say balls to the wall, that's what it was all day
Yeah.
long, every day. You ran all the time. So my run time within 6 months of getting to Hawaii went from 16:45 to 14 minutes flat, and I stayed between 14 and 14:15 my entire career.
Wow. Is that for
Just because
2
once you get
miles?
where you can run, yeah, yeah, it's 2 miles. So once you get where you can run, then you just maintain it and you're good. But I think because when I would show up to a unit, by the time I got to my second or third unit, I started to get it, how to behave and stuff like that. Because if you're a female and you hang around males too much, you're sleeping with them, period. It doesn't matter if you're never seen outside of uniform with them. So that was distressing to me. I didn't like that. I didn't like that I couldn't have male friends unless they were ostentatiously gay and flamboyantly gay. And back then it was don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
So people knew, but they didn't want to know type deal. But the only
Mhm.
people that I could really hang around with that were of the opposite gender were extremely gay. And I love them to death. That's my peeps. I don't care who you sleep with. Just if you're my friend, you're my friend. But
Yeah.
that was the only people I could hang out with other than females. And sometimes they would say that the females were sleeping together. So that sucked. I didn't like
Yeah.
that.
You can't catch a break.
But when it came to being a female, showing up to a unit, I deployed early in my career when most people hadn't. So I had the old veterans call it fruit salad. So I had all kind of fruit salad on my uniform. Um, and then I could run like the wind. So the first day of PT, when they realized I was really fast, they were like, "Oh, maybe she's not just some pretty dumb Southern slut." Forgive my, language there, but
Mhm.
I feel like that's how people saw me until I proved to them that I wasn't. So that was the hard part of. Oh, I think probably still is the hard part of being a female in the military. You have to watch what you do all the time, and
Mhm.
even as a first sergeant, I found out after I retired that there were still some people in my unit or other units, whatever, the battalion, that had rumors of me sleeping with an E5 from another company who was actually kind of a friend of the family, but I thought was repulsive as far as his behavior as a soldier because he wasn't a good soldier. And so I was just like, ew, if I was going to sleep with somebody, they at least be squared away. Come on.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that was in the realm of things that are horrible in the military, being accused of sleeping with people you didn't is, I guess, the worst thing I experienced. And so that's not too bad. And occasionally
Yeah.
having to threaten to punch somebody in the face and tell their commander if they didn't get their hand off my butt. But that's about it. And that
Dang.
happened in an off
Yeah.
post
No,
job.
I
I
think
had a second job as an E4.
that's yeah, it's infuriating, but it's also good to see women that were in the military that aren't afraid to like put people in their place when they aren't acting right too, cuz so many I I witnessed so many women that I served with that just were scared to like yell at people or
Yeah.
like if you I am a very calm person and I was always like shy and polite and respectful to people, but the second you did something that was disrespectful to me, I'm not going to stand up or I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to stand up to you and it doesn't matter. And I never
Yeah, I
was
was
like
very
touched
scared my first
inappropriately.
year.
What'd you say?
Yeah, I was very scared my first year or two. My first year or two in the military, I was very scared to stand up and tell people no. And I was so young. I mean, I was 17, just turned 18, moved overseas, didn't know anybody. It was a lot. And I mean, the drill sergeant tried to hook me up in AIT, tried to hook me up with the supply sergeant. I had no interest in this dude. They got me out of bed in the middle of the night and I was in the day room scared to look at the TV because we weren't allowed to watch the TV. I mean, I just kind of ignored the dude sat on the other end of the couch and was like, and couldn't wait to go back to bed. And I think they understood it. But I know that that is a mild experience compared to what happens to some females in basic and AIT. So I really hope that has been squashed largely because it's
Mhm.
just not okay. You're so vulnerable when you're a
Yeah.
trainee. It's just you have to be above board if you're a drill sergeant. Like you just you
Mhm.
can't do that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. That's I never really heard any horror stories from boot camp for me or even like training, but once you get like on a ship where everything is confined and the second that the ship goes out to sea, the wedding rings come off and people quickly learned I was 18 or I was 19 when I deployed and
Mhm.
these men quickly learned
Yeah,
that if you would come to me and I knew you were married, I was finding out who your wife was and I was messaging them. I didn't care where we were in the world.
good.
And um, I did not stand for it. And some people would say it's like not your place, but I have been on the receiving end of a person cheating on me and I would want to know. And that's always the
Mm,
mindset that I took with it. And then people just stopped talking to me and they were like, that girl is crazy. And I was like, good, you can think I'm crazy. At least you're leaving me alone.
yeah. Crazy is what they call people that they don't know how to deal with and control, I think sometimes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Um, what about like as senior leadership? Did you have problems? I've a common phrase I've heard a lot of women that were higher ranking say like getting a seat at the table or even being listened to while they're at the table. Did you experience similar situations?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. So I distinctly remember I was a first sergeant for almost 3 years at a signal battalion here in Hawaii. And I remember sitting at the table, and we had previously had, I was the only senior enlisted female in the battalion at that time. Well, actually, I think the majority of the time I was in that battalion, I was the only senior enlisted female. Every now and then we'd have a female commander. So they wouldn't give them to me because they would spread us out. So I always had a male commander. We had a male battalion commander, lieutenant colonel, and a male sergeant major. Well, they switched out, and we got a female battalion commander and still had a male sergeant major. Um, I remember sitting at the table and saying things, and the other three first sergeants were males. And I remember sitting at the table saying things, and I felt like she was harder on me and the things that I would say. And I'm like, so because I was very upfront, I was very brash. I was the most senior of the three first sergeants. I think this is after we changed over because in the beginning I was junior, and then all three of the other first sergeants changed out, and I stayed in the seat because I was a first sergeant from the time I hit ground here because I was already an E8. And then when the next three first sergeants came on, they were more junior, I think. We had been in service about the same amount of time, but I'd been in the seat longer. And I am not afraid to rock the boat because I think sometimes if
Mhm.
people fall out, they need to. But I remember sitting at the table producing an idea that was somewhat unorthodox. And she looked at me and was like, she didn't really like it, or she didn't like the way I said it or something. And I was like, okay, ma'am, imagine that what I just said came out of First Sergeant Fleming's mouth. Just really visualize that. How do you take it when it comes from him? Is it seen as, innovative? Is it seen as, I don't want to say forceful. Is it seen as too aggressive? Is it seen as, bitchy? How do you see it if it comes from a male's mouth and not mine? And really, I think that people have to think about it like that. And even us as females, we can be guilty of this. We have
Mhm.
to really look and say, is it because it's coming from a female and I'm not used to females having this type of opinion or behavior? Is that why I think that their idea is too much or too aggressive or too bitchy or catty or whatever adjective you want to describe it as? So it, yeah, it's hard sometimes. But
No, that's interesting
sorry,
that that was
stereotype.
coming from a senior leader too, or a female senior leader.
Yeah. Well, when I was a first sergeant, it was very different. So my commander, the first commander, he and I were very well balanced. The next commander, he was very like tactical. Let's go blow stuff up. Let's dig a hole. Let's whatever. And I love that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But I'm very strong in the administrative world. So even though I was enlisted and I did the tough stuff and everything, and doled out, encouraged him to dole out a lot of the punishment and awards and things like that. I did more of the admin. Like I would just give him things and be like, "Sir, look at this, sign this. This is what you need to do." Blah blah. And then he wasn't really that good at interacting with the battalion commander because it was like I kind of did more of the officer stuff and he kind of did more of the enlisted stuff to a certain extent. He loved
Mhm.
training. That was his jam. And I was like, it was my second 18 months as a first sergeant. So I let him run with it. So I would go directly to the battalion commander because our battalion sergeant major was the nicest way I can say it is he was ineffective. And so, as the senior first sergeant with a good relationship with the brigade sergeant major, because we went back to brag several units, I used to kind of go around him, which also got me in trouble. And the battalion commander wanted officers to be officers and enlisted to be enlisted. And I'm like, ma'am, I am here on behalf of the battalion. I don't care what's on my chest. Let's just work this problem out. And she was not super receptive to that because she was very much like the chain of command's here for a reason. So that might have been a
Mhm.
part of the issues as well.
But sometimes you need that person that's not afraid to, like you said, rock the boat and at least get her to
Hmm.
see that you're rocking it. She doesn't have to agree with it, but at least just, at least you tried, I guess.
Yeah, and everything was always for the benefit of the company and the battalion, always.
Um that's yeah, I found myself you said first sergeant is an E8, right?
In the Army, yes.
Okay, cool. I'm not the most familiar with Army rank structure, mostly just Navy and Marines. But
Okay.
I definitely found myself questioning when ideas would come from females too. While I was in leadership in the Navy, and it's just I would have to check myself and try to find this balance between like trying to give females this platform to speak up and be heard and have their seat at the table, but also make sure that the female that was up here earned that seat too and not pick favorites. It's a hard balance in trying to get the other. I was the only female in
Mm,
leadership
yeah.
in my work center, and so trying to get the men to like see the women as equals but not favor them either. It's a hard balance, and
Yes.
kudos to people that are able to kind of turn off the human instinct side and just see people as sailors, soldiers, marines, and that's it, because it's hard.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
um, okay, so now you are a real estate broker, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. How did you get into that? So you retired and then just knew you wanted to do that, or what was that transition
It
like?
all. So I guess I don't know. I'm not. I don't think anyone who knows me would ever put easygoing in my description. I'm definitely not the most easygoing. I was gonna say, oh, I just go with the flow. I kind of sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. So I think opportunities just come along, and if you, I don't, people call us the lucky Lemkels, me and my husband, and I think that luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. So I always stay prepared. I always
Mhm.
have a plan. But if an opportunity pops up, then hey, let's ride that boat and see where it goes. So I was getting out of the military. I was retiring here in Hawaii, and my plan was just to become a GS employee. I was like, I'm just going to be a GS. I'm going to go work at USARPAC, U.S. Army Pacific Headquarters, in the G6 section. I set myself up for that. Like everything I did getting out of the military was so I could have that GS 12 job, which is a pretty good job when you. I have an associate's degree, so I don't really have a college education per se. And coming out as enlisted, I had a lot of good experience, but I wasn't. I wouldn't have been their first choice for the job based on
Mhm.
paperwork. So I got them to let me go to that job for the last 6 months I was in the Army. So I had experience as a master sergeant. Then I got out, did my 6 months out. Well, before I got out, my husband, who he's a licensed general contractor, and he's not really building homes or doing any of that right now, but at the time he was. So he suggested that I get my real estate license so that I could buy and sell homes for the developers he was building for. So I'm like, okay, why not, right? It's good to have like a second or third plan. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. Let me go get my real estate license. I looked into it. Um, Not to be conceited, but I'm really smart. So like taking the test and learning things wasn't really difficult for me. Um, so it was great. I went to school. I passed the test on the first time, and then I shopped around for a brokerage. I wanted a brokerage where I could do property management because a lot of people who had been in the business, this is in 2017, a lot of people who were in the business during 2008 were like, oh, just wait. Oh, you kids. Oh, you kids. Like everybody does in every industry. You kids
Mhm.
just wait. It's easy now. It'll be rough later. And I was like, okay, well, if it's what made you last? What made you successful? And they said that property management is what saw them through the lean times. I said, okay, uh, let's do it. So I uh, already knew that I wanted to do something with property management in case the GS gig didn't work out, which it ended up not working out. So that was great. But I signed with a really small brokerage, a mom and pop. So not like one of the large ones. We didn't have a large training program. I got most of my training on the job and from asking other people questions constantly and just doing continuing education. So I got my license about 6 months before I retired. And by the time I was on terminal leave, I already had 2 deals that sold before I got out and one the month after I got out. And in Hawaii, if you're doing one a month, you can be very successful in real estate. If you're doing one every other month, you can live off of that.
Mhm.
It's very good commissions out here because the housing median house price is 1.1 million.
Yeah.
Median condo is about 550. So if you sell one a month, you're doing well. And so I was selling a couple before I got out, so I was really excited. Yeah, so that's how I ended up picking real estate. It was just kind of
That
a fluke.
is
And then I realized I loved it. It was so fun and I was so suited for it. And I had no idea.
that is awesome. So you were learning to be a real estate agent during the '08 market crash?
No, no. I asked other agents who were in it during '08.
Oh,
During '08,
okay.
I was a single staff sergeant. No, I'm sorry. Jason and I got married in 2006. So I bought my house. My first house was a VA foreclosure that I bought when I had just gotten divorced from my first husband, had a 2-year-old, and bought a VA foreclosure in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I lived in that, met my husband that I'm currently married to in 2005. We got married in 2006. And let's see. Yeah, so we bought a new house in 2008, but thankfully it was one that needed work, so we had forced appreciation. So we weren't really upside down when we bought it, even though the market crashed. We held it and actually just sold it this past year in July.
Oh, that's awesome.
I got my license in 2017 and also retired from the Army in 2017.
Okay, I thought you said you retired in '07, and I was like, that is a horrible time to get into real estate. Oh my God. No, that's good.
No, you are absolutely correct. No, 2017 was a pretty good time to get in. But I
Mhm.
did listen to the agents that had come before me who had a lot of good advice.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so in Hawaii, that's crazy. My best friend just moved back to Hawaii to be with her family because her and her husband have a baby now, and they
Aw,
are struggling to find a house, and especially one that they can afford. So that's
yeah.
what right now the average is 1 million, or that was the average back in 20.
No, in 2017 it was far lower. We bought a
Yeah.
brand new build in 2014 on North Shore for $653,000, and it was
Wow.
2,000 square feet, which is unheard of here. Yeah, it was a I don't want to say luck and opportunity, opportunity and preparation met, and
Hmm.
we bought that house. In 2017, it was probably around 850. I'd have to look back, but maybe 750, something like that, 750 maybe. But it's gone
Hmm.
up exponentially. I mean, real estate across the country has gone up exponentially. And then
Yeah.
when you compare how much money people make, the median income of a family and the median home price, it's like it used to be, I think 344% of your income was usually what a house would cost. Now it's like 544%. It's increased drastically. So people have to be very careful what they buy and make sure they're getting into the right opportunity. And it's extremely
Hmm.
difficult in a market like this. So
Yeah.
not
No, that's
impossible,
it's.
but you have
Mhm.
to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, it's very discouraging trying to buy a house right now, let alone in Hawaii. So I think they just need to find the right person to help them too.
I know a guy.
Yeah.
No, that's actually my referral tab on my website is I know a guy. But no, we could obviously talk offline, but I'm happy to, tell them the real deal, and that's what
Mhm.
I do. Buying isn't the right option for everybody. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. It really
Yeah.
depends on your financial situation and your familial situations.
So now do you own your own brokerage now, or you still work with the one that you signed with in 20?
No, so I signed with Gloria Almendarez at Realty by the Sea. It was just she and I for about 4 years. Right after COVID in 2021, I got my broker's license. So April 2021, I passed the test, got my broker's license. I became broker in charge of her company, which is basically like if she's the commander, I'm the XO. So I was kind of her right hand man. I brought on new agents, I trained them, And then I was realizing by the summertime, why am I working for somebody else? I'm splitting my commission. I don't need to be. Like I can do this myself. It got to the point where, I mean, she was fantastic, but I got to the point where I outpaced her in sales. And then as far as knowledge, she was asking me stuff, and I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. So I looked into how difficult or easy it was, if you will, to start my own brokerage. So I looked into it and I put my license behind an LLC, and I licensed Seaside Realty and started Seaside Realty in August 2021. So I own my own brokerage. I'm not a team. I'm not under, I'm not Seaside team powered by EXP or anything like that. I am the principal broker and owner of Seaside Realty here in Hawaii. And I have 6 agents and a property management division.
That is so cool. Are all of your agents female or do you have a mix?
No, I have one male. It's funny. It is really funny going from a male dominated universe like the army and going into something female dominated. It's really cool. It's
Mm-hmm.
very different. Um, women operate differently, and I loved having female soldiers because, and this is not across the board, but for the most part, if a guy sees a trash can that's full, they'll go by and be like, I can balance that on top, and they'll
Yeah.
walk off. But a female will be like, look at this, and they'll put their thing on top and they'll take out the trash and put a new bag in the can. And
Yeah.
that's just like a metaphor for how I found most of my female soldiers to be. And some males were fantastic. I had great males in my orderly room and great males that I worked with throughout time, and some dirty females. So it goes both ways. But
Yeah.
overall, I felt like females will always go above and beyond, and they care about the person. The females in my orderly room would bring me food and would take care of me. And it was like, I think guys just don't think about that type of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
working in a female dominated industry is really fun. I have one male who's also an engineer. So he does my plans and permitting. He can advise people on what can be built on a lot and what can't. So he's a fantastic resource. I have one that used to be a broker in Texas and owned her own brokerage in Texas. Realized after her warrant officer husband retired that they didn't really like Texas. So they came back and she's like, hey, I don't want to own my brokerage anymore. So she's my broker salesperson. Phenomenal. So glad to have her. I have 2, let's see. Jessica is just a civilian, never been affiliated with the military, but she's phenomenal. She's super sweet, lived in Hawaii, I think, most of her life. Then I have 2 or 3 who are, the one who used to be a broker is a military spouse and prior military. And then I have 2 more who are I have 1 female retiree. She was a warrant officer in the Army. And then I have 2 who are military spouses currently, like their husbands are active duty. One's Army and
Oh, wow.
one's Air Force, I think. But yeah, so we have a pretty eclectic team as far as services and components and spouses. I used to have another male, but he ended up going to another brokerage because he was doing a lot of transaction management and he was my broker in charge, my right-hand man. But it didn't make fiscal sense to keep him on because the market slowed and I didn't need his assistance anymore. So he just let him go last month.
Well, at least he found a new place to work too. So that works.
Yeah, and he's phenomenal. He'll land on his feet. He was in New York and Chicago, and he'll be fine.
Oh, that's awesome. So what's it like working in a female dominant industry now? That's what I was going to ask, is that the appearance is that real estate is primarily female. What's like the dynamic like? And I'm curious, you put a ton of women working together and there's stereotypically gonna be like drama or cattiness or something. Do you experience that, or have you experienced it?
No, no. The agent. So I'm in a unique market. I know everybody watches Selling Sunset and all these silly shows, and actually, there's only 2, and I'm not allowed to say who, but there are only 2 brokers on island that I don't care for. One happens to be female, and one is male. But overall, we all get along because it's such a small market. If you do people wrong, they will not work with you and you will fail. You will have to stop doing what you were doing and find something else to do. So I think that everybody realizes that, and we all work together for the good of our clients. Because if you're a horrible person, they always say the battle versus the war. If you and I are on the opposite sides of a transaction, and say you're the buyer's agent and I'm the listing agent, and you're nickel and diming my client for something, I might capitulate and give you that to make the transaction close. But I'm going to remember, when it comes down to the end, Kristen, yeah, she's going to fight for her client, but she's going to be petty. And that's probably not the best case scenario for my client. So if you bring another offer later on, I will remember what you did in the last transaction or two. And if, Dustin's an agent I love working with here on Island. She's with another company, but she's fantastic, very fair. If Dustin brings an offer and you bring an offer and they're equal, I'm going to take Dustin's client's offer. So like you won that one battle, but you will lose the overall war because other agents know they can't trust you. And it's a fine line because you have to fight for your client, but you can't fight to the extent that you alienate the people that you're going to be on the other side of the transaction from at some point.
No, that
It
makes
has
sense.
to be a win-win. You have to be fair.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that Oahu is not a big island at all. And although you would think that like it's a pretty populated area, but even like where I live in Maryland, there's a lot of people here, but somehow it's still a small town and word spreads quick. And if you are a shady business owner, people know about it instantly. And especially with like social media and stuff, it just takes one bad review or one complaint posted online to completely ruin your reputation.
Yeah. And that's the way it is here. So there's about 950,000 people that live on Oahu. A great deal of them are military. There are like 12,000 agents on island, but the top like 500 do 95% of the business. And we all know who each other are. So shameless plug for myself. I am in the top 1 to 2%, depending on the year. And so I am going to work with these same agents over and over again. And if nobody wants to work with me, I am really doing a disservice to my clients. So that's why, I like to keep good relations with people anyway, but that's just an extra incentive not to be a dick. So overall, the cattiness, it's not really a thing. I mean, sometimes you're going to like some people more than others, and that is natural. But most of us just really work together and care about each other and work together for the better, better experience of the client. And, if you're going to be here, you might as well make it pleasant. So.
What do you say to people or I guess, do you agree with the statement that real estate is an oversaturated market to be in as a job?
No, gosh, you ask good questions. So I'm in a really tiny market on North Shore. Yeah, no, it's really good because I didn't even think you would ask something like that. So I'm in an area on Oahu called the North Shore. So I live in Wailua near Mokuleia. It's down towards the tip of the island. The island goes like this. I'm at like this end. And then on the northwest side, and then Haleiwa is kind of central north, and then you start to go up to Kahuku and around the island. So when I got my license, I was very nervous because there are some big names up here. Not big names you would recognize, but big names for our region. So like Sturman Realty, big realty company. We have Team Real Estate. We have Mariana Brigo, who is a saint, and I love her. She actually helped me before I was even an agent. She's just really an amazing person. But I was nervous. Oh, and the Moody's, oh my gosh, they work for a large company. I think they're like Better Homes and Gardens now, but they are big names up here. And so I was really nervous. Like if I'm coming in here, I can't come in here like a bull in a china shop, which is how I approach most situations. Like you have to be very delicate. So, I came in and I'm like, hey, I'm Erica. They knew me as the Army girl, but now I'm like, I'm going to try swim in your pool. I hope that's okay. And so I started to bring buyers, and they like it when you bring a buyer. And then I started to represent sellers. Well, all of a sudden one day do you mind the little stories? Is that okay?
No, go for it.
Okay. So one day I had a client. Oh, my dog is being naughty. Stop that. She's smelling my rucksack. I'm not in anymore, but I have like an event this weekend, and she's smelling it. She's like, this smells so interesting. She's a chewer, so I got to watch her.
Ooh.
Go lay down, you. I have a Great Dane, so she's looking at me over the gate like, pardon me. Quit looking at me, dog. She's a pretty baby, but she's very naughty. She's only 2. Okay, what was I talking about? Story.
You were bringing people buyers.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I had a client. Yes. So this was a buyer's issue. So I used to paddle canoe competitively. So the ocean canoes where you have 6 people in there, you're like that. I used to do that, and this was a couple years ago. So I had a client. Well, she wasn't even my client yet. We paddled canoe together. She said, hey, Erica, you sold Nancy her house, which we paddled together as well. I sold so your sphere is really important. If you're a realtor listening to this, I sold everyone in my sphere a house. So make sure people in your sphere know what you do for a living because they might use you if they think you're good at it. So my friend Nancy that I paddled with bought a house for me. My friend Eddie that I paddled with bought a house for me. And then Nancy called me and was like, "Hey, Rebecca wants to see this house." I'm like, "Okay, I am there." So I go there, I show her the house, we're looking at it, and while we're there, she's like, "So, see what had happened was, I had this other prominent realtor on the North Shore show me the house before you." And I'm like, "Crap," because that's called procuring cause. So they're entitled to the commission if they want to fight me for it. They are their client, kind of. Like, it's confusing, but they're kind of their client at that point because they showed them that house. So I was like, "Okay." I said, "Well, thank you for telling me." But then it put me in a delicate situation because as a junior person on the North Shore, a junior agent, I now have to approach one of the arguably top 3, top 4 agents in my region and say, "Hey, I'm going to steal your client if that's okay." So I called them. This is on Saturday morning. On Sunday, I was doing an open house for my broker. It wasn't my listing, but I was holding open house for her at another North Shore property. And I was like, "Okay, I have to call this agent. I can't keep not doing it." So I called the other agent. I was like, "Hey, how are you? Blah, blah." She's like, "Oh, I'm great." I said, "So I have a question." I was like, "My client," I was like, not my client. I said, "I paddle canoe with this girl named Rebecca, lady, woman, whatever. She's, 30s, my age, whatever. Well, I'm 40s now, but I was like, for Rebecca, I showed her the property. She told me you had showed it to her. She wants to make an offer, but mentioned that maybe you weren't as responsive as she wanted, and she wants a little bit more, hands-on leadership or whatever you want to call it with like hand holding, but that doesn't sound very nice. She wanted a little more intensive experience. She wanted her agent to be there with her." And I was like, "Do you mind if I represent her as buyer's agent? Because I know you have procuring cause. You showed her the property." And she was like, "Oh no, honey." She's like, "Go ahead, you go ahead." Just without having that conversation, if she had noticed that I was the buyer's agent and had the time to look back at the tax records and realize the person she showed it to had bought it, it could have been bad on me, and she could have potentially sued for the commission. So
Yeah.
being scared to do something, but knowing you have to do it, you just got to do it. And it solidified the relationship that I have with the agents on North Shore, that even if it's hard, I'm going to still approach it and do it with you. And I'm always going to be respectful, but I'm also going to, fight for my client. So,
Yeah. And that goes with anyone in business, like at all. Just be a good person, like be a decent human being, and it will be okay.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a great lesson that
some
you learned
people make that
early.
surprisingly hard. Mm.
You would be surprised. And like, I'm a wedding photographer, and just dealing with other
Mm.
wedding photographers, and it's also a woman dominated industry. There's actually surprisingly a
Yeah.
lot of men in the industry too, but just the amount of like not whatever the opposite of direct and clear communication is, that's what most of them are, and they're like scared to
Huh.
just tell you how it is. And um it's very frustrating, especially coming from a military background. And like, if you don't want to work with me, I'm not offended. Just tell me. I'm going to be offended if you don't tell me,
Yeah.
and then I find out that you hired my friend, or just even another photographer hiring me to assist them or something. Like, if you don't want to hire me, just tell me. My feelings are going to be hurt more, or you're
Yeah.
going to lose like credibility in my book as a good, honest business owner if you go behind my back and don't just communicate directly with me. But a lot of people
Yeah.
um, struggle with
One thing
that.
I find that's kind of unfortunate, yeah, I lead a lot of education classes. So I partner with Active Duty Passive Income. I'm one of their referral agents. I lead monthly education meetups, and because I love to teach. I freaking love it.
Mhm.
Even if you don't buy anything, I want to teach you so you can use it at your next duty station or just have that
Mhm.
knowledge. And I'll have potential clients who will contact me on Facebook, which I love, and ask me tons of questions about properties and tons of questions about Hawaii and blah blah. And I'll pour into them, and then I'll be like, "Hey, are you looking at some places?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I already have a realtor." And I'm like, "Okay, what, you're asking me all these questions? Like, did you ask your realtor?" And they're like, "Oh, they don't know." I'm like, "Bruh, if they don't know, why are you working with them? Like, you should want to work with the expert." And like, I always have time. I will make time for what is important. And so
Mhm.
I like to represent the clients and make sure they're getting into something good. And, just getting an accepted offer is step one. Then you have to negotiate through the entire contract. And it takes, 30 to 45 days, and things happen. Sometimes appraisals come in low. Do they know how to do a revision of value? Do they know that VA is the only one you can do that with? Do they know how to talk to the appraisers? Do they know the appraisers personally? Do they know the other agents? Have they ever handled an assumption? There's so many questions. How good are they with the VA loan? Do they know to ask escrow for the military first responder discount? Do they know how much it's going to rent for on the back end? Which, if you're watching this or listening or whatever, and you're thinking about buying in Hawaii, it does not cash flow. It does not cash flow. If you pay $1 million for a property and your mortgage is $6,500, current interest rates about 7%, you will be upside down because you can probably only rent it for about $4,000 a month. Okay, you'll be way upside down. And this is everybody, every property, unless you buy a foreclosure, which is a whole other ball of mess in Hawaii, or you buy multifamily. Those are the only ways to potentially cash flow. And I wish more realtors would tell their clients this. And so I hope that if people only tune in for 5 seconds, this is what they hear. Because it saddens me to my core to see military families that are having to rent it and lose $1,500 a month, or having to sell it and can't cut any profit or have to come out of pocket. It pains me. If that's going to be your situation, I would rather move you into housing, because as a property manager, they call me, and then when I tell them the bad news, they are just devastated. And they're like, my realtor didn't tell me. And yeah, so it makes me sad. We can't promise future rental value. It's against the contract, but you can give them an idea of what things are currently renting for in the area and let them make their own decision. People aren't that stupid. They'll see it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just be a good human. It's not that hard.
We say it's not hard, but there are some people who it must be just a foreign concept too, and it makes me sad.
Absolutely. Do you have any? I wish we had more time. I try to keep these episodes at about an hour, but diving into like VA loans a little bit, do you have any like common myths you want to debunk off the top of your head?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Let's hear them.
Super common myth, you can only use that's like my bread and butter. I love it. You can only use your VA home loan once. Nope. Another common myth, you can only have one VA home loan at a time. Nope, that's not true. Something that people do say that is inaccurate, another myth, is that you can use your VA loan for investment properties. That's half true, okay? So you can purchase something, live in it as your primary residence, and then rent it? Absolutely. But you cannot buy something knowing that you're never going to live in it with your VA home loan benefit. So there are ways to have more than one VA home loan at a time. There are ways you can use your VA home loan benefit over and over again. Funding fee is a whole other thing that, hopefully you ask your realtor about the funding fee, because it changes. And if you're disabled, you don't pay it. Very important things. But those are some of the most common.
No, that is great. I've heard that a lot of people think you can only use it once ever. I knew that one. I didn't know you could do multiple at once or more than one at once. What about if you want to buy a home with someone that is not a veteran or not eligible for a VA loan? Does that affect what you get as far as like your rate, or how does that affect you depending on the relationship with the person that you're buying with?
Okay, so great question. I love the way you phrased it. If you are buying with your spouse, well, I'm married to we were dual military, so we're kind of different. But say I'm married to a civilian. If we are married and I am the service member, or they are the service member, either way, your spouse can be on the loan with you and their income can be used, and it's regular VA loan. Now, imagine that I'm currently married to a service member. Say I want to buy a house with my daughter who is not military, never been in the military. We could go in and buy a house together, but we would have to put 12.5% as a down payment. And that was the last time I checked. I think it's still somewhere right around there. But you do have to have a different down payment. It's not zero. And there are just some different stipulations, but you can absolutely do that.
So once you're married, they kind of just see you as the same person, for lack of a better way of putting it. Cool. That's good to know.
The two shall become one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other. I haven't used my VA loan yet, but I did buy an investment property and learned that about VA loan. Is there any time you would recommend someone not use their VA loan and go conventional or a different type of loan instead?
Yes, once again, fabulous question. Sorry, I sound like a sycophant, but yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So, when we moved to Hawaii, I had already used my VA home loan once. So, I bought the foreclosure in North Carolina on my VA certificate. Then we bought a second house in North Carolina. We sold the first one, bought another one on my husband's VA certificate, and we still owned that home when we moved to Hawaii. So, at this point, it's my turn to use my VA certificate again. We could have stacked it onto my husband's, but the VA has limits if you are doing a second tier entitlement. What it means is since we already had a VA home loan out in North Carolina, it would have put a limit on how much we could have gotten here. So my VA certificate was free and clear, which there is no, oh, that's another one. There is no limit on the VA home loan benefit. If you do not already have a VA home loan out, you can borrow up to your level of income and credit. So like I live in Hawaii. We previously got approved for a house in the 2 millions because of my income and my husband's certificate being free. But the loan limit only comes into play when you already have a loan out. Okay, so we moved to Hawaii in 2014. We were going to use my certificate. The first time you use your VA certificate, there's a funding fee. It's like a charge the VA charges you instead of mortgage insurance of 2.15%. Subsequent use of the VA loan, it is 3.3% of the purchase price. So 6 times 3 is like, what, 18? So it was already going to be about $20,000 just giving it to the VA for the privilege of them loaning me money, even though I had 800 credit score and whatever. So there is a loan called the USDA loan. It is for rural areas, and there are income limitations. In 2014, when we bought our house here, the USDA loan limit was right around 700, 650, something like that. We were pre-approved for 650, and my income with a family of 4 was just under $90,000, which was, it's always a sliding scale. It depends on how many dependents you have and how much you make, and it changes. So right now the limit is
Yeah.
$1,089,000, I think, for VA and maybe Freddie and Fannie and all those. I'd have to check, but I do a lot of VA, so I know it's $1,089,000 for Hawaii, not everywhere, Honolulu County. But so we weighed it out, and we were like, okay, we could buy this property with a VA home loan. Actually, we couldn't even buy it with a VA home loan because it was a CPR. So 4 houses share one tract of land, which is super common in Hawaii. It's kind of like a condo, but it was a single family home. The first house was house A. That's what we were purchasing. Last house was house D. C and B weren't built yet. So you can't buy using a VA loan if all the houses that in that development, the same tax map key aren't completed. It has to be more than 50% sold, or there's some kind of rule. Once again, Hawaii is a very special animal, so make sure your realtor understands it. So we actually got a USDA loan. We did have to pay 1% funding fee, so it was $6,500, and that's like insurance. And then every month we paid like $111 for mortgage insurance until we got 80% loan to value. And that happened really fast because 2014 to 17, the value skyrocketed and we had bought a brand new house. So USDA loan was the better product for us at that time. So make sure that your lender and your agent understand that VA may not always be the best case scenario. And they understand how to employ those other loan products because USDA is only for rural areas. And surprisingly, most of this island and all the rest of the islands are considered rural by population density.
Wow.
So,
Would never have thought that Hawaii
yeah.
would fall under that, so that's good to know.
Yeah, most of this island, it's crazy. Just not Honolulu, Kailua, Kaneohe, yeah, some of the central and most of the southern and southeast. But Eva Beach, Kapolei, West Side, North Shore, all USDA.
Wow. Well, that is very helpful information. I want to ask another question that's like somewhat selfishly based, but I think it would be good for everyone because this is about like service members turned entrepreneurs or business owners. Is it, I think, a common, I don't know if it's necessarily a misconception, but a common idea a lot of people who are self-employed have is that it's harder to get approved for a home loan if you're self-employed. Is that true, or do you have any advice on someone who is self-employed making sure that they're doing the work a few years out to make sure that they get the best approval they can?
Yes, that is actually somewhat accurate. So when you're self-employed, being like that means you don't have a W-2 job. So like I pay myself by 1099. I'm an independent contractor. I'm a business owner. So this is most realtors, most wedding photographers, a lot of military spouses because you're forced into being an independent contractor. What you have to show is, so say I want to get approved for a loan here in Hawaii. I have to show them my 2022 taxes and my 2021 taxes, my tax return, and then they will average those two. And that's what my income is for that year. So you have to have 2 years showing you can make it in that industry before they'll give you a loan on it. So if you started your photography business in 2022, you have to have 2 years. So you can't really use that income. Now, if you're a photographer and you go work for a company that pays you a salary and you're W-2, yes, you can use it because um, you're no longer self-employed.
Mhm.
If you're a real estate agent and you work maybe for a Redfin or somewhere where they pay you W-2, I don't know that they do, but I know they pay a salary. If you work for Redfin or something, you might be able to uh, claim that as your job. If you're a government contractor, that's a little different. You can still claim that as income because you're W-2, even though you fall under contractor. So it's a lot. It's very nuanced. Your local lender
Mhm.
is the best resource. Don't go to
No.
Rocket, don't go to those. I mean, they're good to find out about where you are, but your local lender is going to know the market in the local area and what's acceptable and what's not.
Okay. So for people who leave, like I left the military in September of this year, would a lender look at my income of my military pay up until September and then just a quarter of the year for my
Nope.
self-employed income? Or they really just wouldn't count it until my first full year of being self-employed? Or it's just about the tax return, which would be
You're out of the
both?
military now. Yeah, no,
Yes.
you're out of the military now. That pay is ended. So it doesn't matter. A lot of people there, oh, I see this over and over again. So this is good. This is good. People who are retiring from the military are always like, "Oh, I'm going to wait till I retire to buy a house." And then they think when they're on terminal leave, the last 3, 6 months they're in, they're just going to fly back to Idaho or wherever and buy a house using their military pay. You're not. You have to get a statement of service from your commander stating you have 12 months left in service. So if you're within your last 12 months of service, they're not going to give you a loan based on your military income. They can do one based on your retirement. If you already have your disability, you can get it based on disability. Um, for your photography business, it would have to be 2 years of tax returns, and that is as far as I know. So
Mhm.
they might be able to do something else for you, but I haven't had any lenders that were able to be that creative. But your military pay, once it's done, it's done. And then
Right.
something people ask all the time, when you get out, if you're going to school using the post 9/11 Montgomery or post 9/11 GI Bill, you get BAH, right? That does not count towards income when you're looking to purchase a property because it's temporary. So they will not count that. I've not met a lender that will. If somebody knows of someone that will, then that's great, but I've not met a lender yet who will count that.
No, that's good to know. That was going to be my next
Disability,
question.
retirement, yeah. Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah, disability and retirement absolutely count. Even though disability is not taxed, which is fabulous, they do count, but your BAH for GI Bill does not count.
Okay. Thank you for all of that information. It's very helpful. Um,
Sure.
my last
Yeah, like I said,
two
I love to teach.
question I can tell. Um, my last two questions I ask everyone are advice that you would give a female that's thinking about joining the military, and then advice that you would give a female starting a business.
Okay. For females joining the military, I mean, it's basically like the same advice I'd give you at any other job. Kind of decide how you want people to see you because you're going to build your persona. You create that person. You know, when we're growing up, we're trying to figure out who we are, and it's constant struggle to develop yourself and develop the person you're going to be. So when you join the military, if you set in your mind that people are not going to take advantage of me and I will be seen as an equal, and you claim your spot at the table, you'll have your spot at the table. Don't accept less than what you know you are deserved, but also earn it. Don't just show up and be like,
Mhm.
I'm a girl. I deserve this because I'm a queen. That's great. Love you, sis. I'm all about that. I got some queens, my sisters that are in. I love y'all. You gotta put your money where your mouth is. You gotta be producing. You know, nobody's gonna give you extra credit because you're a female. It can it can make it a little harder. And I think if you approach it like that, like you know it's going to be harder and you put your best foot forward and you're constantly hustling and trying to be the best and weigh yourself against the males. And yes, in physical aspects as well. Train yourself to be strong. You can do it. You can do it. It just takes work. A lot of work, because we are physically different, but you can do it. It just work at it. Don't accept less than what you know you're capable of and push past what you think you're capable of. And same thing if you want to start a business. I love books. I don't know if I have this one here right now, but Um, okay, I don't know where it is, but there's a book called, am I allowed to pitch a book? It's not my book. It's called The 10X Effect. I think it's Grant Cardone. He writes a lot of business books and stuff like that. Basically, the basic premise of the book is no matter what you think you're going to do in life, it's going to be 10 times harder than you imagine it's going to be. And if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to work 10 times as hard as everybody else, or you're not going to be at the top. You're not going to be in the top. You just won't. You
Mhm.
want to ride first class, you want to have that business, you want to be the go-to, 10 times. There are no shortcuts. That's it. And you can do it.
Yeah, mic drop. Jeez, that was good.
I know, I do love
Okay,
that book.
where
I probably lent it to somebody.
yeah, just
Yeah.
send me the name of the book or like a link, and I'll put it in the show notes too, so that people can just click on the link and find it.
Cool. Yeah, another
Yeah.
great one is the Marky and Sitch, who actually one of the owners and founders of ADPI, has a book called Military House Hacking. That's got a lot of great strategies in it as well. So I'll drop both of those to you because those are two of my favorite books. 10X Effect is more towards being in the military and starting a business. The House Hacking book by ADPI is more how to get started if you want to be a real estate investor. And I love ADPI. I just got back from the conference, so I'm fired up right now, and I want to buy an apartment building.
Okay, well that's some big
But I
goals.
started in single family,
Yeah,
Yeah, I started
that's
in single
awesome.
family, and right now I live in like basically a triplex. Like you can do it.
Where can everyone find you, your business, website, social media, all the things?
Cool. Yeah. So I can definitely drop you all those links. But I am seaside808.com. So Seaside, like being at the seaside, 808.com is my website. My contacts are in there. I also have a YouTube channel. It's a litany of a billion things. Okay. Some of it's like self-help stuff. Some of it's explaining real estate. And I actually did stand-up comedy. So that's on there. And if
Oh,
you Google my name, I'm one of the only Erica Lehmkuhls in the country, so I'm easy to find. Please, no hate mail. I don't appreciate that, and I will bust you out. But yeah, if you need advice or just want questions on how to become a realtor or how to, buy a house or how to whatever, be in the military, and you need a previous female senior enlisted to tell you can freaking do it. Hey, hit me up. Just remember, we're 6 hours behind in Hawaii, so don't
awesome.
call me at 3 a.m. Please.
You will not answer.
No, no, my phone goes on do not disturb. But I
Yep,
do love to
same.
help, so please don't ever be scared to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was there was way more information than I can digest in one session, so hopefully people listen to this again. But thank you again, and maybe we'll have you on again.
I would love that.
Okay, take care, Erica.